Mm.
Hello, hello. It is Marquette and
Paul
Redham, and
Yep.
welcome back to episode 10 of Calls with Paul. 10, honey, we double digits.
Up here, baby.
We double digited it.
Yeah. Should we do it 10 times?
No, that'd be annoying.
That would be.
Well, anyway, today we're going to talk about something that you've been getting a lot of questions about.
Yeah.
Should you update your home or should you sell it?
Right.
And we'll talk about some of the ROI type things to keep in mind, as well as some basic things to ask yourself to kind of walk someone through the process, whether they should make those upgrades or take the leap to selling it. Does that sound good?
It does.
Tell me about this, the questions you're getting and what prompted people to start asking this.
Well, we sent an email out and asking if any people have had any changes of plans and that kind of stuff. And we got a bunch of responses with people talking about the upgrades they were going to do and the things that they're thinking about doing with their homes. And of course, I'm writing everybody back with my thoughts on their unique situation. And there aren't any necessarily clear rules of thumb, but for the most part, the advice was pretty similar over and over again.
Let's talk about some of those. This morning when you and I were talking about today, you said a phrase that I think I'm going to have to adopt because you always have a nice turn of phrase.
Yeah.
And you said sizzle.
Sizzle sales. Yeah.
Sells, not sales.
Yeah.
Sells.
Sizzle sells.
Sizzle sells, or sexy sells, if you like sexy better than sizzle.
I do like sexy.
So sizzle sells, and as we talked about it, it kind of became clear that there are certain types of upgrades, if someone's thinking about upgrading, that are definitely worth it, that you should invest in. And then there are other upgrades that are kind of necessary, but aren't going to get you your money back. And then there are things that are, a little borderline. So are you cool if we go through each of those?
I'm very cool.
All right. Well, let's talk about what kinds of upgrades are worth it. If someone is kind of considering making some improvements and they're still not sure if they want to sell, because the idea is you don't want to invest a whole bunch of money that you're not going to get a return on your investment on, and then you turn around and sell it and you just don't recover that money. So tell us about the kinds of upgrades that are worth it. Tell us about Sizzle. What's Sizzle?
Well, Sizzle is really the things you can see that they give a home pop. But I have to caution you first, like all things are based on your location, your lot, whatever, all that appreciates, and the things that you do depreciate. So, if it's Sizzle for 10 years from now, you probably need to hold off. But for short-term Sizzle, if you're going to sell like in the next 3 to 5 years, you may want to sizzle up your home.
And part of those are on-trend updates.
Right.
Right. People, you keep telling me and reminding me that people don't want a fixer-upper. Right. I love a fixer-upper, but
I know you do.
But not everybody wants a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
And so you want to, if you're going to make updates, make sure that they're on trend. It's interesting to me that, design trends come and go, and you have to be really careful when you're doing these kinds of updates that you don't go too far down the path of trendy. When, for example, I may upset some people here, but when mosaic tile was having a total moment 10 years ago, I guess at this point, and everywhere you went, you saw mosaic tile, I thought that is going to look so dated. And we were doing some remodels at the time, and I did not choose to do mosaic tile specifically because I felt like, in a lot of ways, I thought it was busy. I thought the patterns looked like chicken pox, like it was just really hectic in the kitchen. And so we steered away from that, and I'm glad that we did, because now we go into homes and we see a lot of kitchens and things with this mosaic tile backsplash, and they look dated.
Yeah.
So there are certain trends that might be super popular, but I think as people are thinking about things, if you are going to go on trend, there's a way to do it in a way that's a little bit more enduring. Picking colors and shapes and things that you can see are not going to be tiresome, that people aren't going to get tired of looking at, and they're going to have more of a shelf life, if you will.
I like to tell people to look at what's been good in the past and stayed that way.
Kind of classic.
Well, timeless is really the best investment. Of course, that could all change at any minute, I guess, however design works, but that seems to be the safer bet. Well,
so what are some other areas that you would recommend that people are worth it? Kitchens, are they worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. Kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms, paint, landscaping, all these things that you see that make things feel warmer and newer and nicer.
Well, let's take it piece by piece.
Yeah.
Because again, you like to just throw it all in there.
Yeah.
Kitchen
sorry.
sink. Kitchen. So countertops.
Yeah.
painting the cabinets or new cabinet faces.
Yeah, and dolling up the kitchen is always a good idea.
I think faucets, things like that can look fresher and new. And if you have the money, a backsplash tile, I think, is absolutely a game changer for the way a kitchen looks. And the cool thing is now they have some press and stick options that are not as expensive. They do. Like, technology keeps making home renovation and upgrades a lot more affordable. Same thing with wallpaper. Now they have peel and stick wallpaper that you don't have
Really?
to. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's not so permanent. It's not so messy and all that other stuff. So kitchens, definitely. You mentioned landscaping. What are you talking about there?
Landscaping landscaping's great, especially if you have time for things to become mature. Things look very different from when you plant them in a month to sell, the little tiny flowers and stuff that we like to see that give homes color and pop right away, versus putting landscaping in that matures over a period of years.
For sure. And I think also landscaping, the results are pretty staggering. Now, Home Again did a national survey, and they said that landscaping would get you a 401% return on your investment, which is a really staggering number.
That makes me want to put all of our money in landscaping.
Me too. And then John Harris, he's a landscaping economist. Is he here in Texas?
I'm not sure.
Well, this landscaping economist basically gave a little bit of a different number, which was lower. He said it would contribute about 28% to your overall home value. And home value is different than your ROI.
I think it really depends on the home and the neighborhood and price point, like all these improvements and the percentages that come with it. To me, you got to take that in the context of the house.
Yeah. So we talked about on-trend updates. We talked about kitchens. We talked about landscaping. Another thing that would be worth it is paint.
Oh, paint's a miracle thing.
Yeah, I think the return on investment on paint, of exterior paint at least, is about 43%.
Yeah, and interior too. I mean, it just, buyers don't know the difference between good construction and bad, but they associate it with clean and dirty, and a new paint job really comes off as super clean.
That's true. And doors, front doors, how about that?
Yeah, front doors. I saw a study once where it showed that, and this was years ago, so it's probably more now, but that a front door could impact a home as much as $4,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
The ones I looked at, the more recent numbers I had seen were in terms of ROI, and like depending on the type of door you put in, a steel door had like 101% ROI.
Really?
Fiberglass doors or fire glass doors were like a 72% ROI. I would imagine it would be higher. I mean, like depending again on the style of your home, a steel door is not going to look appropriate for every, in our neighborhood, a wood door would go a lot further. So it's going to depend a little bit on that, but I think it kind of goes to that curb appeal, right? Like somebody wants to walk up to it and it doesn't look dated. It looks fresh. It looks shiny and new. In fact, we're preparing a home for sale that should hit the market in a couple of weeks. And one of the things that we're having them do is the doors are just kind of faded. So we're having them restain the wood and we're having them restain the decks, which I think will go a long way to just making it look fresh and shiny. And it's a beautiful, almost $2 million home. And I think it's going to look gorgeous.
Oh, it'll look beautiful once it's all spruced up and ready to go.
All right, so those are things you'll get value out of. What are the things that you don't get value out of?
Oh,
for upgrading?
That's always kind of upsetting to some sellers. But there are things that are up and down votes out in the market, and those are like roofs and windows and these things. People just expect them to work. Your electricity, if you do some upgrades to that, all these things that you can't see, the hidden stuff, while incredibly important for your home, they don't necessarily add value. People just expect them to work.
Well, and that, I remember, when we would do remodels, I always wanted to put all of our budget in the things I could see, the aesthetic stuff. And I used to get really mad and disappointed when we'd get bids back and like, well, honey, you got to replace the plumbing. Yeah. I don't care. I do care. I care that the plumbing works, but the plumbing is not sexy. Nobody can see that I have new ducts in the ceiling. They don't care that it's a brand new HVAC unit. What they care about are those countertops and tile and paint and faucets and light fixtures. Yeah. And that's where I want to spend the money.
Well, they do care if the plumbing doesn't work.
Well, that's true.
But that means you're probably moving out.
Oh, well, we'll get to that. Yeah. We're going to get to that. Okay, cool. So mechanicals, basically. Plumbing, AC, the things that you need to live there, but that are not necessarily
Yeah, and this last week, maybe we'll get to it later, but the solar panel discussion
Well, that's next.
That's next. Oh,
That's
wow.
next.
I did a good segue.
You did. So we talked about the things that are worth it.
Yeah.
And then there are those things that are not worth it that are probably necessary.
Right.
And then there are things that are borderline. Solar panels.
Yeah.
Swimming pools.
Oh, swimming.
Things that are kind of.
No, swimming pools are pretty much in the sexy category.
Well, talk about solar panels and swimming pools. Talk about solar panels and swimming pools.
So
and anything else that fits in that category.
Well, there's a lot, but I'll try to be somewhat brief. So solar panels, almost all the solar companies are touting these numbers that if you buy solar panels, that your home will sell for more, which I don't see any evidence of that being accurate at all.
Where are they getting those numbers?
Well, I think what they're really backing out is, okay, so if we save people electricity on their electric bill, then that makes the buyer more able to pay more money for the house.
Sure.
And I don't see that playing out. I do see people thinking it's pretty cool. It's new. I've never owned a home with solar panels. I'd be pretty excited about it. I don't know that I'd pay more for the house. And I'd challenge you guys out there. I'd be curious what your input is if you would pay more for a home with solar panels, just for the sake that it has it.
Well, and it's expensive.
Yeah. I think the folks we're talking to now put 20 grand into it.
Well, we looked at it once, and it was like 20 to 30,000, and that's a lot. And how long does it take to recover that investment? And in terms of selling, I don't know. I think the right buyer might really get excited about solar panels, but I don't see it changing your price point.
I don't see us making recommendations that people go out and get solar panels installed so that their home sells for more.
That makes sense.
I don't see that happening.
What about swimming pools?
Swimming pools. This was exciting yesterday. One of our past clients reached out. This is how a lot of times I start doing the research that I do. And
when you geek out.
Yeah, I geek out. So we looked at in Westlake. So this is only for Westlake. But we looked at Westlake and we said, okay, are homes with pools selling for more or not? And what we found in Westlake was that indeed homes with pools, with homes from 3,000 to 4,000 feet with pools sold for $200,000 more.
Isn't that hard though to narrow down? Like how many of those houses had views? Yeah. How many of those houses, like it's really hard to equalize.
Well, that's why I went broad on the subject matter, but I narrowed the footage because I figured the 10,000 square foot homes all really require a pool. So I was afraid that would throw us off. So I tried to keep it there in the middle, but I do want to do more research on it. You were telling me maybe this summer I'll get to do that.
Well, and I'm curious if what homes in Northwest Hills, do they sell for more if they have a pool?
Absolutely.
I might have an agenda I'm working. Might have an angle that I'm working there.
They don't sell for more here at all.
Not in our neighborhood. Definitely not at our house.
Not on Far West.
Not at our house. Okay. And was that surprising to you to see those kinds of results?
It really was. So my initial reaction to the client when she called was, gosh, about a third of the people or so are going to say, hey, I've owned a pool. I don't ever want to own a pool again. And they would just kind of scurry off. Now, then you have the other folks who want to own a home with a pool but don't want to install it. They don't want to feel like they're taking the hit for paying for and building the pool. Yeah,
because cost is it varies a lot depending on your lot condition, but it's expensive.
Right. So there's that group who really want a home with a pool, but they're not necessarily interested in paying more for the house, of course. And then there's the folks who are kind of like, I guess we would be, if we can take it or leave it. Like a pool's not necessary. We're going to look at the opportunities in front of us and make smart decisions.
Cool. All right. So we've talked about things that will work or not for upgrades. One of the things that I think that we now have of joining Compass that's kind of cool is the Compass Concierge. So that if people are thinking about making upgrades to their home and getting it ready to go on the market, the concierge program means they don't necessarily have to come out of pocket for that. Do you want to tell people about it?
Yeah, I think we should be real clear though first. Compass Concierge, as far as I know, does not install pools.
No, they don't.
No.
No.
They just do the cosmetic stuff that's kind of proven to make folks more money, which I think is probably the brilliance of it. I mean, the whole idea behind the Compass Concierge is that we're able to make sure our clients really make the most out of their home sale.
And they get it ready. Yeah, you get it ready, you make it look its best and maximize that sell value. It covers, generally speaking, it varies, but things like painting, staging, which I love because we really think staging makes a huge difference in how attractive a home is to potential buyers.
And moving costs got in there.
Decluttering.
Yeah, decluttering.
Landscaping, some landscaping at least.
Refinishing wood floors.
Refinishing wood floors, countertops, changing out light fixtures, tree trimming.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, there have been a lot of houses that we see online and we think, gosh, if they would just trim the trees in front of the house so that people can actually see it, it would make a huge difference. So those kinds of things are covered. It doesn't cover what you spoke to. It doesn't cover mechanicals. It doesn't cover structural stuff.
You can't move a wall.
It can't cover anything that's new, right? Like you can fix the surface of things that are already in place. You can stain your decks. You can do that, but you can't put in anything new. So if any of you are thinking about getting your home ready to go on the market and you have questions about what that might look like, or you want to know how the concierge program works, reach out. We're happy to talk to you about it. And the cool thing is you don't come out of pocket. You're not paying for that. Concierge is covering those costs, and then they pay it back at.
Well, they pay it back at closing.
At closing.
So it's one of the things I think is really cool about the concierge program is it's not profit. We don't make a dime off of it. We actually, I guess, arguably, we lose some money because there's more paperwork and more stuff that needs to go on. So we invest more time, but we don't. There's no
incentive.
There's no interest paid. We'll use any provider that you want us to. Of course, we have our preferred ones that we like you to use because we trust and know them. But it's not a profit center. And I think a lot of people get confused thinking, well, certainly there's a catch here and there's, Paulie's making more money.
Well, the catch is a home's going to sell faster and hopefully for more money for the client. That's the cool thing. So, all right. So we talked about Sizzle sells. Sizzle sells. How does someone make that decision about whether they should update their home or sell it? I mean, that's a really personal decision, but sometimes, it's a big deal and people can get kind of paralyzed in that decision-making process. So let's talk about some of those.
Yeah.
Okay. One of them, affordability.
Right.
People are really talking about property taxes in Austin and feeling that pinch of affordability. Does that impact the decision to update or sell?
Absolutely. I mean, some folks are like, taxes are killing me. I want out. And I'll move somewhere else. I think we had a classmate that was selling his house some time ago, Ellis's classmate, who was planning to move to Spicewood at Balcones. And that was all about taxes.
Really?
And like we see that over and over again. So yeah, that's a big indicator.
Well, there's not a lot you can do to lower your taxes.
Well, I mean, you've got your homestead exemption, and the thing that happens that's really fascinating to me is people turn 65 in their house and they put their over 65 exemption on it, and then they feel like they need to really stay put because that exemption doesn't travel with them. I wish it would, but it doesn't. So those guys have a tougher time making a decision on whether to fix it up or sell it.
Another thing I think that comes into it is you suddenly notice 100 things that you don't like about your house. Like, I totally understand because to me, if my house, and we did that, we lived here for several years without it being remodeled. Like I'd come home.
Awesome then.
I would come home and I wouldn't be happy. I wasn't happy being at the house. It didn't bring me comfort. It didn't bring me joy because I kept seeing what needed to be done. And that can really chip away at your happiness. So if you find yourself in the position of like you're constantly thinking about the things you dislike about your house, what do you do?
Well, you either fix it or you move, or you stay unhappy. I think we know some folks in the staying unhappy category. I won't limit who they are, but yeah, I mean, you have to make a decision, right? Like I was fine in our old house, but you wanted a nice newer experience, and I'm glad we did it. But that's a family decision that has to be made with priorities. Some folks want to sell and start all over. We sure looked at that before we did our remodel. I didn't want to live through a remodel, so we went and we looked around quite a bit, and then came back more educated and made the decision to fix this house.
And if you're thinking about it, I think one of the things I would suggest is that people reach out and talk to their realtor or talk to you in kind of way, because it may be that the upgrades that you want to make are relatively simple and cost effective and it makes sense to do it, or it may be that the upgrades that you want to make are so expensive that it doesn't make sense because you won't get the ROI back on the house if you're looking to sell it, or those kinds of things. So those factor into it. What about your neighborhood? If I think one of the clues that it might be time to sell is if you can't stand your neighborhood anymore. It might be a neighbor. It might be that you have a neighbor that's driving you nuts, or it might be that you all of a sudden your street becomes a cut through, or in our case, they installed road humps on our streets.
Yeah, we had nothing to do with it.
We had nothing to do with that, and it really agitated me because then all of a sudden people were honking. Now, thankfully, this went away, but there was a while there. I was like, I can't tolerate this. Like every time people go over the road humps, they're honking at us. Like that.
I thought they
changed.
were being friendly.
No, they were mad.
I thought I could wave more.
They were mad and they were punishing us, the neighbors. So, things like that. Like if your neighborhood changes, you can't make your neighborhood different. You can't change your home's location. So what do you think? Does that mean it's time? Is that a hint that it's time?
I think generally
to sell?
if you're unhappy, you should do something about it. Life's short. Let's have a good time. If you're unhappy, get out.
Cool. Yeah. And what about you've run out of space?
You can look at the cost of doing an addition. We have another client, you don't know this, but we have another client closer in over on Sunshine who was running the traps on that, talking about adding on instead of having I don't remember if she had a 2-1 or a 2-2, but adding on a more room because she needed it or buying something else.
Cool. So you're looking at doing an addition. Those are expensive. You could always put a storage shed in the backyard. You could get a storage room remotely, although those become fixed costs. But there are options, or you could sell. I mean, a little bit depends on what's driving your space factor. Yeah. Like, is it that you're adding a family member? Because you're not going to have them live in the storage shed, right? Like, if you've got a mother-in-law that's moving in with you, or you've got the birth of a child, like that definitely can factor. And you mentioned that earlier, that's another one of the reasons to considering moves. You see people really looking at making a move when they're going through a life change. Yeah, life changes are really the thing to look for in real estate. Like kids graduating high school, empty nesters, or even going from like being a certain elementary to middle school, because all of a sudden your choices, if you want to leave your kids in the same school, your choices just really expanded. If you talk about taxes, right? Well, or if you want to size down but keep your kids in the same grade schools, like we don't. When Ellis and Lyndon get to an age that they're at Murchison, or if we wanted to move, we would have a bigger area to do that and leave them in the same schools with all their chums. I said chums. Yeah, that's right. Okay. School needs, like your child's situation changes. Maybe they have a special need that would be better served by a different campus, or divorce. No, we don't need to talk about that. Okay. Or retirement. We can talk about that. Downsizing. Yeah, downsizing really excites me. I mean, people have life circumstances that cause you to reevaluate where you're at and where you're living and whether it makes sense in the long haul. And definitely if that's happening, we can always help walk you through. Yeah, and sometimes folks just want to change. I mean, we have some clients that call us pretty regular every 18 months, I think was the number that, not on purpose, but it just kind of happens. Some folks just move. They shall not be named. They shall not be. Maybe they're watching. Yeah, cool. Well, do you have anything you want to add about whether someone should update their home or sell it? No, I think you have to take it seriously, and I think it's good to get a consult from me or somebody else about that. I think the needs are so variable and so unique to each person's. There's just no pat answer for this. Cool. Well, there you have it, guys. We talked about which upgrades are going to bring you the best and highest ROI, which ones are might necessary but may not have the return on investment, those that are sort of borderline. And then we walked some basic thought questions about what you might ask yourself about whether it's time to move or list your house for sale, or maybe you can upgrade it and make some other improvements to it. As always, if you've got any questions, we encourage you to drop your comments or questions below, or if you're not comfortable doing that, reach out directly to this guy.
I like to talk.
He does, or text or email. So anyway, thanks for joining us for episode 10 of Calls with Paul, and we'll see you next week at 12 p.m. on Facebook Live, Wednesday.
That'll be episode 11.
That will be episode 11. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.